Well, let's continue our special focus on Mkhwanazi's explosive allegations. Joining us now is University of South Africa. Within that particular institution, he is in the Policing Practice Department, a senior lecturer there, Dr. Mpho Matlala. Dr. Matlala, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. I know that you and I don't have the capacity to test the allegations that have been made by General Mkhwanazi, but at face value, do you believe that some of what he has said is indeed credible? And what makes you say that, if indeed you agree with that sentiment?
Well, Toli, I wouldn't agree. Well, good evening to you and good evening to the viewers. I wouldn't agree and I wouldn't also disagree because it is incumbent upon General Mkhwanazi to actually, because he alleges, so that evidence must be tested and then we can see where that takes us. But what is important is that whatever evidence that he has in his possession, there are a lot of technical issues that talks to procedural justice in terms of how did he come across that kind of evidence? Was it constitutionally or unconstitutionally obtained? And you know, this also raises questions as to the real intention behind these explosive revelations in media, pretty much against, I suspect, the protocols of the SAPS and in certain instances legislation itself.
Yeah.
So that will be my stance. I really will not commit whether they're credible or not credible, but they are scary. Be that as it may, they are very scary and they suggest a compromised national security.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about those protocols as you see, for example, the pictures that we are now beaming to South Africans, because some people have looked at that and just the optics of how that media briefing was carried out, and many people very uncomfortable about what went on there. But before we get there, from an institutional integrity point of view, I'm now asking about the police as a whole. How damaging is this for the police, and given the fact that this is happening at the very top?
Look, these allegations is a clear indication of cracks within the senior management structures of the SAPS. And this means that the substantive moral conception of the SAPS or its disposition to pursue its purpose and constitutional mandate of combating crime has been seriously compromised. I mean, the allegations talk to a criminogenic and compromised generalship that takes orders from crime bosses or even political principals, which is really reminiscent of a banana republic, a police or a law enforcement agency in a banana republic, because now the allegations point to the fact that people are no longer taking instructions or command within the rank and file of the SAPS, but they're taking it elsewhere. And this is the compromise to the national security that I was talking about. And this also talks to a seriously compromised brand image of the SAPS, which will require expert work to restore or rebuild, you know, at a very high price. We know how brand experts these days, how much it costs to get a brand expert, but that is probably one of the routes that the SAPS will have to take. So generally, these explosive revelations may well mean that the police have lost the moral authority to hold power in the community. How do you enforce the law when there are allegations of criminality in the ranks of the SAPS? not just any rank, the highest order, that is the generalship of the police.
Public trust is what I sense you are going towards. How do these allegations affect public trust in the police? And we have been testing the ground as well on this station. We've gone out, spoken to people. There are those who are saying they stand on the side of the police commissioner in KZN, General Mkhwanazi. There are those who feel that perhaps there is more to this than meets the eye, and therefore the general himself may not have covered himself in glory. How do members of the public relate to the police after this?
Look, as it stands, Colin, the public does not have much faith in the police. These allegations, they don't inspire much confidence. If anything, the allegations will allow opportunistic actors to score cheap political mileage or cheap political points. And for KZN and Gauteng, for instance, criminal syndicates will start exploiting the cracks, taking out certain police officials by contract killings may as well become the order of the day, and criminality in general will thrive. Perhaps this explains why General Mkhwanazi has reverted to his camouflage. Remember, he's a former member of the Special Task Force, and after having been promoted to the rank of general, he then reverted back to the blue uniform. As to whether he received permission to don that uniform and why he surrounds himself with members of the Special Task Force, who, by the way, are trained for combat. This is a paramilitary group trained in the art of rural and urban warfare. These aren't just ordinary police officers. And, whether he was given permission to that uniform is the first point of issue. The second issue that I will point to is that I know that as a provincial commissioner, he is allowed to address media on issues pertaining to law enforcement in his province of KZN, talking to crime stats and police operations. But to talk to these matters that he addressed on Sunday, I doubt if very much he received that kind of permission. And that will be a breach of the standing orders or the governance protocols within the police. And equally, these are very sensitive matters. General Mkhwanazi ought to have known from 1993, when he joined another specialized unit in his formative years, the Internal Stability Division, that he would have signed a non-disclosure clause. And even when he went to the Special Task Force, that would have been the case. Even when he was promoted to the generalship, that would have been the case. And he knows very well that the disclosure of certain information is regulated by, I think, Section 70 of the Police Act, and that what he did may well be a contravention. Look, I have enormous respect for General Mkhwanazi, and he's a hard worker, a seasoned career police official, a no-nonsense taker. We've seen him. But there is a saying that you do not, for example, approach court with dirty hands. In as much as he may be hailed as a hero for bringing up these explosive revelations, in doing so, you cannot subvert other laws and governance protocols. And we may be standing with a situation where now I see that social media is beginning to galvanize, and there are already threats that if action is taken against him, and if action has to be taken against him, action must be taken against him. But now there's people already threatening and galvanizing around social media to say then the July unrest that happened when former President Jacob Zuma was incarcerated will repeat itself. And I think that is very out of order for those actors in social media to feed that populism monster.
All right.
Because, you know, the allegations he's making, either Parliament or the presidency must be allowed to actually set up an inquiry and test the veracity of these allegations. You know, I heard another analyst just before we engaged saying, no, for example, the WhatsApp messages were between former Minister Cele and Kat Matlala or whoever, you know, and that is why it is important that the veracity of all these allegations should be tested.
All
but
right.
really, for public trust, we are scared.
Okay. Dr. Mpho Matlala, I think you've addressed the protocol issues, which would have been my next question. The protocols of what or how a police officer should go about when aggrieved, laying a complaint against a fellow member. All right, Dr. Mpho Matlala is from the South African Policing Practice. This is a department within the University of South Africa.